The explosion came without warning. One moment, Doyen was checking the scanning equipment in the communications bay. The next moment, everything was fire and screaming metal. The ship lurched violently to the left, throwing him against the wall. Alarms blared from every direction. Red emergency lights painted everything in blood-colored shadows. All crew to escape pods. Captain Han's voice crackled through the speakers. "We're going down. This is not a drill." Doyen ran. His legs felt like water, but he forced them to move. The corridor tilted at a crazy angle. Smoke filled his lungs. He could hear other crew members shouting, running, trying to reach the pods before it was too late. The ship groaned like a dying animal. Through the windows, he caught glimpses of green jungle rushing up to meet them. He reached Pod 7 and threw himself inside. The door sealed shut automatically. Through the small window, he saw flames spreading across the ship's hull. Then the pod launched, and Doyen's stomach dropped as he was thrown into the planet's atmosphere. The pod spun wildly. Doyen's head cracked against the padding. His vision blurred. He tried to reach the controls, but his arms wouldn't cooperate. The world became a mess of green and blue and pain. Then everything went black. When Doyen opened his eyes again, everything was quiet. Too quiet. His head throbbed with pain. Blood dripped down his forehead. He touched it carefully and winced. The pod had landed hard, half buried in dirt and broken vegetation. One side was completely smashed in. He checked his suit's systems. Oxygen was fine. Medical scans showed a concussion, bruised ribs, and various cuts. Nothing immediately fatal. The emergency beacon was flashing yellow instead of green. Damaged, but maybe still working. He had 3 days of supplies, maybe 4 if he was careful. Doyen forced the pod door open and climbed out. The jungle hit him like a wall. Heat, humidity, and strange smells filled his nose. 2 suns hung in the sky above, their light filtering through a thick canopy of alien trees. Everything was green, but not the green of Earth. This green was darker, almost blue in places. The plants had strange angles and curves that hurt his eyes if he looked too long. He pulled his emergency pack from the pod and checked his supplies. Water purifier, medical kit, plasma cutter for defense, some food rations, and a small tent. Not much, but it would have to do. He activated his wrist computer and tried to contact the ship. Only static answered. He tried the other pods. More static. Doyen was alone. He had just started to organize his supplies when he heard it, a sound that made his blood turn cold. It was part whimper, part growl, part something else he couldn't identify. It came from somewhere deeper in the jungle, maybe 200 meters away. Every survival instinct told him to ignore it. Injured animals were dangerous. This planet was marked as hostile. The database listed dozens of predators that could kill a human in seconds. He should focus on survival, on finding shelter, on waiting for rescue. But Doyen had become a xenobiologist for a reason. He had always been the kid who brought home injured birds and stray cats. His mother used to scold him for it. "You have too soft a heart, Doyen," she would say. The universe isn't kind to soft hearts, maybe she was right. But he couldn't ignore that sound. He grabbed the plasma cutter and moved toward the noise. The jungle was thick, forcing him to push through vines and strange flowering plants. Insects or something like them buzzed around his head. The ground was uneven, covered in roots that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. The sound came again. Closer now. Definitely distressed. Definitely young. Doyen pushed through a final curtain of hanging moss and stopped dead. In a small clearing surrounded by broken metal debris was a creature from his worst nightmares. It was about the size of a large dog, but that's where any similarity to Earth animals ended. 6 legs, each ending in curved claws that looked sharp enough to cut steel. Dark scales covered its body, overlapping like armor. A long, flexible tail thrashed back and forth. And its head was all wrong, with too many angles and eyes that glowed with a pale blue light. A Vralkan cub. Doyen's hands started shaking. He had seen pictures of these creatures in the database. Adult Vralkan were 3 meters tall and weighed as much as a small vehicle. They were apex predators, intelligent enough to use simple tools, and they had never been successfully approached by any species. Every attempt at contact had ended in death. This was just a baby, but it could still kill him easily. The cub was trapped. Its back leg was caught between 2 pieces of twisted metal, probably from an old mining drone. Blood matted its scales. It saw Doyen and snarled, showing rows of sharp teeth. But behind the aggression, Doyen saw something else. Fear, pain, desperation. He should leave. He should run. This was insane. Instead, he found himself moving closer. "Hey," he said softly in Korean, the language feeling strange on his tongue after years of speaking standard. "Hey, little one. I know you're scared." "I know it hurts." The cub's eyes tracked him. Those blue eyes were unsettling, too intelligent, too aware. It growled low in its throat, a sound that vibrated in Doyen's chest. A warning. Stay back or die. Doyen kept talking, keeping his voice low and steady. "I'm going to help you. I don't know if you understand, but I'm going to help. Just don't eat me, okay?" He knelt down slowly, making himself smaller, less threatening. The cub watched every movement. When Doyen reached out toward the trapped leg, the cub lunged at him, teeth snapping closed centimeters from his hand. Doyen jerked back, heart hammering. Okay, he breathed. "You're scared, I get it. But if I don't help, you're going to die here." He examined the trap more carefully. The metal had twisted around the cub's leg in a way that meant he couldn't just pull it free. He would need to cut through the debris carefully, without injuring the leg further. It would take time. It would require getting very close to those teeth and claws. Above them, through the canopy, Doyen could see the twin suns starting to descend toward the horizon. He probably had 4, maybe 5 hours of daylight left. In the distance, he heard a deep roar that made the cub's head snap up. An adult Vralcon somewhere in the jungle, probably looking for this cub. Doyen pulled out his plasma cutter and his medical kit. His hands were steady now. He had made his choice. "All right, little one," he said. "Let's get you free before your mother finds us. Something tells me she wouldn't appreciate a stranger touching her baby." The cub's eyes narrowed, watching him with that disturbing intelligence. It growled again, but quieter this time, almost as if it understood. Doyen took a deep breath and got to work. The first cut with the plasma cutter made the cub scream. It was a sound Doyen had never heard before, and hoped never to hear again. High-pitched and full of terror, it echoed through the jungle like an alarm. Birds or something like them exploded from the trees above, shrieking their own warnings. I'm sorry," Doyen whispered, pulling back. The cub thrashed violently, trying to free itself, making everything worse. Blood ran more freely now. "Please, you have to stay still. I'm trying to help you." The cub didn't understand his words, but something in his tone must have registered. It stopped thrashing and went very still, watching him with those unnatural blue eyes. Its chest heaved with rapid breaths. Every muscle in its body was tensed, ready to attack or flee the moment it was free. Doyen wiped sweat from his forehead. The twin suns beat down through gaps in the canopy, making his suit feel like an oven. He checked the trapped leg again. The metal had cut deep, but if he could just remove the pressure, the leg might heal. Might. He started cutting again, more carefully this time. The plasma cutter glowed hot blue as it sliced through the old mining equipment. The smell of melted metal filled the air. The cub whimpered but held still. Its claws dug into the soft earth, leaving deep gouges. "That's good," Doyen encouraged. "You're being very brave. Much braver than I would be." As he worked, his mind raced with questions. What was a Vralcon cub doing alone? These creatures traveled in family packs, never separating from their young. Had it wandered off? Been left behind? And what was this mining equipment doing in the middle of nowhere? The planet was supposed to be uninhabited, unexplored. The metal finally gave way. Doyen carefully pulled the debris apart, trying not to jostle the injured leg. The cub watched him intensely, making small sounds in its throat. Not quite growls, not quite whimpers. Something in between. "Almost there," Doyen said. "Just a little more." With a final piece removed, the leg was free. The cub immediately tried to stand and collapsed with a yelp of pain. The leg couldn't support any weight. Doyen could see swelling already starting, the scales discolored around the injury. He reached for his medical kit and the cub's head whipped toward him, teeth bared. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Doyen slowly opened the kit, showing the contents. "Bandages, pain medication, splinting materials. I need to fix your leg," he explained, knowing it was useless but needing to talk anyway. "Or you won't be able to walk. You won't be able to hunt or run or get back to your family." The cub tilted its head, that disturbingly human gesture from something so alien. It looked at the medical supplies, then back at Doyen's face. Those blue eyes seemed to see right through him, weighing his intentions. Then it did something completely unexpected. It laid its head down on its front paws and watched him, waiting. Doyen's hands trembled as he reached for the injured leg. The cub tensed but didn't pull away. He worked quickly, cleaning the wound with antiseptic, checking for broken bones. The cub's low growl was constant now, a rumbling warning that vibrated through Doyen's fingers. But it let him work. "Your bones feel intact," Doyen murmured. "That's good, very good, but this is going to hurt." He used compression bandages to reduce the swelling, working as gently as possible. The cub's claws extended, digging deeper into the earth. When Doyen applied the pain medication through an injection, the cub snapped at him. Its teeth closed on his forearm, piercing through the suit material. Doyen bit back a cry of pain but didn't pull away. "It's okay," he gasped. "I deserved that. I'm sorry." The cub released him, looking almost surprised at itself. It made a strange chirping sound like an apology, or maybe Doyen was just imagining things. The pain in his arm throbbed in time with his heartbeat. He finished splinting the leg using materials from his emergency kit and pieces of the cub's prison. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. The cub tested the splint carefully, putting a tiny bit of weight on it. It wouldn't be running anytime soon, but at least it wasn't completely helpless. Doyen sat back, exhausted. His arm hurt where the cub had bitten him. His head still throbbed from the crash. The twin suns were much lower now, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange he had never seen before. How long had he been working? 2 hours, 3? In the distance, that deep roar sounded again. Closer this time. Much closer. The cub's head jerked up, ears or whatever they were flattening against its skull. It responded with its own cry, a sound that started low and climbed higher, a distress call, or maybe it was telling its pack where to find it, where to find the strange creature that had touched it. Doyen's survival instincts finally caught up with his actions. He had just helped a baby predator. Its parents would be coming. Adult Vralcon that would see him as a threat. As prey, he needed to run. He needed to get as far away as possible before they arrived. He stood up, gathering his tools. The smart thing would be to head back to his pod, seal himself inside and wait for rescue. Let nature take its course with the cub. The cub watched him prepare to leave. It tried to stand, fell, and tried again. The splinted leg wouldn't support it properly. It would need days to heal, maybe weeks. Until then, it was vulnerable. Any predator could find it. Even scavengers could finish what the trap had started. Another roar, even closer. Doyen could hear something moving through the jungle. Something big that didn't bother being quiet. The cub called out again, its voice getting weaker. It was tired, hurting, and scared. Doyen looked at his pod, just visible through the trees. He looked at the darkening sky. He looked at the injured cub struggling to stand. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Too soft a heart, Doyen. The universe isn't kind to soft hearts." "I know, Mom," he said quietly. "I know." He put down his pack and started gathering wood. The cub watched him with those glowing eyes, head tilted in confusion. Doyen pulled out his chemical igniters and began building a fire in the clearing. If he was going to do this, if he was really going to stay with an injured alien predator while its pack closed in, he was going to need light and heat. The first flames caught, small and struggling against the humid air. Doyen fed them carefully, building them higher. The cub made a startled sound at the fire, backing away awkwardly on 3 working legs. But it didn't flee. It watched the flames with curiosity rather than fear. "Fire," Doyen said, pointing. "Humans have used it for thousands of years. It keeps predators away, usually. Hopefully your family will be smart enough to be cautious of it." The cub limped closer to the warmth, settling down near the fire but not too close. It kept watching Doyen, as if trying to understand what kind of creature would stay with it when danger was coming. Doyen didn't have a good answer to that question. He pulled out his plasma cutter and checked its charge. 70%. Enough for a fight if it came to that. Though what good a plasma cutter would do against a pack of adult Vralcon, he didn't want to think about. The suns finally set completely, and the jungle transformed. Bioluminescent plants began to glow in dozens of colors. Strange sounds filled the air, some beautiful, some terrifying. The temperature dropped sharply. Doyen pulled out his thermal blanket and wrapped it around himself. The cub shivered. Without thinking, Doyen moved closer and extended part of the blanket toward it. The cub sniffed the material suspiciously, then awkwardly maneuvered itself partially under the covering. They sat there together, human and alien, sharing warmth beside a small fire while the night deepened around them. In the darkness beyond the firelight, Yellow eyes appeared. Then more eyes. Then more, watching, waiting, hungry. The first attack came 2 hours after full darkness. Something moved in the shadows beyond the firelight, something that made no sound but displaced air. Doyen felt it more than saw it. The cub sensed it too, struggling to its feet despite the injured leg. Its growl started low and built into something that made Doyen's bones ache. Then it lunged from the darkness. A creature like a massive serpent with too many legs, covered in segments of gleaming shell. Its mouth opened wide enough to swallow Doyen whole, showing rings of teeth that spiraled inward. Doyen raised his plasma cutter and fired. The blue beam caught the creature across its face. It shrieked, a sound like metal scraping metal, and retreated into the night. But Doyen could still see it circling, patient, waiting for the fire to die or for him to fall asleep. The cub had positioned itself between Doyen and where the creature had attacked. Despite its injury, despite being just a baby itself, it was trying to protect him. The realization hit Doyen hard. This little creature understood that they were in this together now. "Thank you," Doyen said softly. He checked his plasma cutter's charge. 65% now. He couldn't waste shots. He fed more wood to the fire, making it bigger, brighter. The flames cast dancing shadows across the clearing. The cub settled back down, but its eyes never stopped scanning the darkness. Doyen noticed it was favoring him with its left side, keeping its good legs between him and potential threats. They were pack bonding. The thought was absurd and terrifying and strangely touching. This cub, who should see him as food or threat, was treating him like family. The night grew colder. Doyen's breath misted in the air. He had never felt this kind of cold on a planet with twin suns. It was like the heat was sucked away the moment the light disappeared. The cub pressed closer to him, seeking warmth. Its body temperature was higher than his, like a living furnace. Doyen found himself leaning into that warmth. "I'm going to give you a name," Doyen said, needing to talk to keep himself alert. "I can't just keep calling you cub in my head." "What should I call you?" The cub made a soft chirping sound, almost like a question. "Nabi," Doyen decided. "It means butterfly. My little sister used to call everything small and pretty Nabi. You're not exactly pretty by human standards, but you're small. And there's something delicate about you, even with all those teeth and claws." Nabi tilted its head at the sound of its new name. Its tail wrapped loosely around Doyen's leg, not restraining, just touching. Connection. The second attack came faster. A pack of creatures that looked like hairless dogs with elongated skulls tried to rush them from 3 sides at once. Nabi roared, that sound far too big for its small body. Doyen fired the plasma cutter in quick bursts, driving them back. One got too close and Nabi's claws raked across its face, sending it yelping into the darkness. The plasma cutter was down to 50% charge. Doyen's hands were shaking from adrenaline. How many more attacks could they survive? How long until something got through? He checked his wrist computer. Midnight local time. 6 more hours until dawn. 6 more hours of this. "Tell me a story," Doyen said to Nabi, knowing it was ridiculous but needing to hear a voice, even his own. "No? Okay, I'll tell you one. When I was 7, my sister and I found a bird with a broken wing in our backyard. My mother said to leave it alone, that nature would handle it. But I couldn't. I kept the bird in a box, fed it, helped it heal. It took 3 weeks before it could fly again." Nabi's eyes were fixed on him, glowing softly in the firelight. "When we released it, the bird didn't fly away immediately. It sat on the fence for a long time just looking at us. My sister said it was saying thank you. My mother said it was just confused. I think it was something in between. I think it knew we had helped it, even if it didn't understand why." Something howled in the distance, a sound that made the hair on Doyen's neck stand up. It was answered by others from different directions. Whatever was out there was coordinating, hunting in packs. Nabi responded with its own call, that same distress cry from earlier. But this time it was different. There was a pattern to it, complex and deliberate. It wasn't just crying for help. It was communicating, telling its story. And somewhere in the jungle, something answered. The third attack was different. A single creature, but massive, moving through the undergrowth like a tank. It paused at the edge of the firelight, studying them. It looked like a bear mated with a crocodile, all muscle and armored hide and cold calculation in its yellow eyes. Doyen stood slowly, putting himself between it and Nabi. His plasma cutter felt too small, too ineffective. This thing could shrug off the beam and tear them both apart. The creature took a step forward, then another, Nabi moved to Doyun's side, matching his stance. Both of them standing together, facing down something neither could defeat alone. The creature's eyes shifted between them, reassessing. 2 targets. One injured, one armed with unknown technology. The fire. After a long moment, it turned and melted back into the jungle. Not defeated, but deciding that the risk wasn't worth the reward. Not yet. Doyun's legs nearly gave out with relief. He sat down hard and Nabi collapsed beside him, panting. They had survived. Barely. "You're very brave," Doyun told the cub. "Very, very brave. Your mother should be proud." As if summoned by his words, a new sound cut through the night. Deep and resonant, it made the ground vibrate. It was answered by other voices, a chorus of power and fury. Adult Vralkan, calling to each other as they moved through the jungle. Nabi's ears perked up. It tried to stand, fell, tried again. It was calling back, but its voice was weak now, exhausted from pain and fear and effort. The adult voices grew closer. Doyun could hear trees being pushed aside, branches snapping under heavy weight. They were coming fast, following Nabi's calls, following the scent of their cub's blood. "They're going to kill me," Doyun said quietly. "You know that, right? The second they see me near you, they're going to tear me apart." Nabi looked at him with those 2 intelligent eyes. Then it did something that Doyun would never forget. It placed one paw on his hand, claws retracted, and made a soft trilling sound. Not aggressive, not scared. Something else. Something that sounded almost like reassurance. "I hope you're right," Doyun whispered. "I really hope you're right." He fed the last of his good wood to the fire, making it blaze bright. If he was going to die, he wanted to see what killed him. The plasma cutter charge was down to 30%. Not enough for a real fight. Maybe enough to make a point. The jungle went silent. All the night sounds, all the hunting calls, everything stopped. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then they emerged from the darkness. 3 adult Vralkan stepped into the clearing, and Doyun's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. They were massive, each one easily 3 meters at the shoulder. Their scales gleamed like dark metal in the firelight. 6 legs each, thick with muscle and ending in claws that could split stone. Their heads were angular and alien, with those same glowing blue eyes, but much larger, much more intense. The lead one, bigger than the others with scars across its snout, focused on Doyun. Its lips pulled back, showing teeth designed to rend and tear. A low growl built in its throat, and Doyun could feel it in his chest like a second heartbeat. Nabi limped forward, placing itself between Doyun and the adults. It made a series of sounds, complex and rapid. The adults went still, listening. The scarred one's eyes shifted from Doyun to Nabi's splinted leg, to the medical supplies scattered around the fire, to Doyun's face again. Doyun stood slowly, every instinct screaming at him to run. But there was nowhere to run, and somehow he knew running would trigger an attack. Instead, he raised his hands slowly, showing he was unarmed. The plasma cutter was at his belt, but he didn't reach for it. "I helped," he said quietly. "Your baby was hurt, I stayed. I protected it." The scarred adult took a step forward. Then another. It towered over Doyun, close enough that he could feel the heat of its breath, could smell something sharp and alien. One swipe of those claws would end him. The creature lowered its massive head, bringing its face level with his. Those blue eyes stared into Doyun's soul, judging, weighing, deciding. The twin suns would rise again soon. But Doyun didn't know if he would live to see them. Doyun stood frozen, barely breathing as the massive Vralkan studied him. The creature's eyes were ancient and wise and completely alien. He had no idea what it was thinking. No idea if the next second would be his last. Then Nabi made a sound, urgent and pleading. It limped closer to its mother, if that's what the scarred adult was, and pressed against her leg. The cub made more sounds, a whole story in a language Doyun couldn't begin to understand. But the meaning was clear enough. It was explaining, defending him. The other 2 adults remained at the clearing's edge, watching but not approaching. Packmates, Doyun realized. Aunts or uncles, maybe. A hunting party that had come searching for their lost cub. The mother listened to Nabi's story, her eyes never leaving Doyun's face. When the cub finished, she made a deep rumbling sound that could have been a question. Nabi responded by lifting its splinted leg, showing the bandages and the careful work Doyun had done. The mother's massive head swung toward the spot where Nabi had been trapped. She walked over on silent feet despite her size, examining the cut metal, the blood-stained ground, the tools Doyun had left scattered. Her intelligence was frightening. She was reconstructing what had happened, understanding the sequence of events. She returned to Doyen and lowered her head again. But this time there was something different in her posture. Less threat, more curiosity? Assessment? He couldn't be sure. Slowly, carefully, Doyen reached for his wrist computer. The mother tensed, her packmates growling low. Doyen froze. "I want to show you something," he said softly. "A recording. Of what happened, please." He activated his suit's holographic projector with exaggerated slowness. The air above his wrist shimmered, and then an image appeared. It was footage from his helmet camera, showing Nabi trapped and struggling. Showing Doyen's approach, showing the careful work of cutting the cub free, treating its wounds, staying beside it through the night. The mother watched the entire playback without moving. When it showed Nabi biting Doyen's arm, she made a sound that might have been amusement. When it showed the attacks from other predators, how Doyen and Nabi had fought side by side, her eyes narrowed thoughtfully. The playback ended. Silence filled the clearing. Even the normal jungle sounds seemed to have stopped, as if the whole planet was waiting to see what would happen next. The mother examined Doyen's arm where Nabi had bitten him. The suit was torn and blood had crusted around the wound. She sniffed it, then looked at Nabi, then back at Doyen. He could almost see her thinking, processing, understanding that her cub had hurt this strange creature. Yet he had continued to help. Then she did something that made Doyen's heart stop. She pressed her massive head against his chest, gently, briefly, before pulling back. The weight of it nearly knocked him over. It was acknowledgement, recognition, something that felt like respect. The other two adults moved closer, examining Nabi's leg with careful movements. One of them made soft sounds at the cub, like scolding for wandering off. Nabi made small apologetic noises back. Doyen found himself smiling despite the terror still coursing through his veins. "You got in trouble, didn't you? Your mom is mad you scared them." The mother turned back to him at the sound of his voice, her head tilted in that same gesture Nabi had made. Then she moved to the edge of the clearing and settled down, making herself comfortable. The other two adults did the same, forming a protective triangle around the clearing. They weren't leaving. They were staying, but why? Nabi limped over to its mother and curled up against her massive side. But its blue eyes remained on Doyen, watching him with that intensity that no longer felt threatening. The mother wrapped her tail around her cub protectively. Doyen sat down by the fire, which was burning low now. He was exhausted, running on adrenaline and fear and something else he couldn't quite name. His supplies were nearly gone. The plasma cutter was at 20%, but he was alive. Impossibly, incredibly alive. "I don't understand," he said to the mother. "Why are you staying?" She watched him with those ancient eyes but didn't respond. Of course she didn't. They had no common language beyond gestures and hope. The night continued to pass. Doyen dozed in short bursts, jerking awake at every sound. But the adult Vrolkan remained alert, watching the darkness. Nothing approached the clearing now. Whatever predators had been circling before had sensed the adults and fled. The Vrolkan were apex predators for a reason. As the hours crawled by, Doyen found himself talking again. Maybe to keep himself awake. Maybe because the silence was too heavy. Maybe because he needed to process what was happening. "I never expected this," he said quietly. "When I joined the survey crew, I thought I'd be cataloging plants and taking samples. Safe work? Boring work?" My family was relieved. They thought exploration was too dangerous. The mother's ear twitched toward him, listening. They were right, obviously, but not in the way they thought. "I didn't expect to crash. Didn't expect to find Nabi. Didn't expect any of this." He laughed quietly. "My sister is going to say I told you so many times. If I survive to tell her about this." Nabi made a sleepy chirping sound from its mother's side. "You know what's funny?" Doyen continued. "Every species we've met in space, they all thought humans were weak, soft. We don't have armor or claws or natural weapons. We're slow and fragile. But we have something else. Something that makes no sense from a survival standpoint." He fed the last few twigs to the fire, watching the flames dance. "We help. Even when it's stupid. Even when it's dangerous. Even when every logical part of our brain is screaming at us to run away. We see something in pain and we can't help but try to fix it. It's gotten us in trouble throughout our history. But it's also what makes us, us." The first hints of dawn began to color the sky. Not purple this time, but deep pink like a wound. The twin suns were rising, one slightly ahead of the other. Light filtered through the canopy in shafts that painted everything in gold and rose. Doyen heard something new. A distant mechanical hum that made his heart leap. A ship, a rescue shuttle maybe, drawn by his emergency beacon finally reaching a relay. The mother heard it too. She stood alert, positioning herself between the sound and her cub. The other adults flanked her, ready for a threat. "It's okay," Doyen said quickly, standing. "That's my people. They're coming to rescue me." But as the sound grew closer, Doyen realized the problem. The rescue team would see the Vralkan. They would see what looked like predators surrounding him. They would assume the worst and open fire to extract him. The shuttle burst through the canopy, weapons already powered up. Doyen could see the pilot and two soldiers, their faces grim behind their helmets. The targeting lasers painted red dots across the adults' bodies. "Don't shoot," Doyen screamed, waving his arms. "Don't shoot! They're not attacking me," the mother roared, a sound that shook the leaves from the trees. Her packmates echoed her, creating a wall of sound that was both warning and challenge. Nabi tried to stand, to join them, but fell. The splinted leg couldn't support quick movements yet. The shuttle's weapons charged with a high-pitched whine. Doyen's plasma cutter was still at his belt, useless against a military shuttle. He had seconds to stop this from becoming a bloodbath. He did the only thing he could think of. He walked over to the mother and stood beside her, placing his hand on her armored flank. She tensed at his touch but didn't move away. He could feel her muscles coiled tight, ready to attack or defend. "Captain Yuna," Doyen shouted at the shuttle, recognizing the pilot. "Stand down. I repeat, stand down. These creatures are not hostile. They're protecting their cub, the one I saved." The shuttle hovered, weapons still active. Through the cockpit window, Doyen could see Captain Yuna's shocked expression. She was speaking rapidly into her comm, probably reporting to whatever command ship had received his beacon. The standoff continued as the twin suns climbed higher, painting the jungle in light that hurt to look at. Doyen stood with the Vralkan, human and alien united in the desperate hope that understanding could bridge the gap where words could not. The shuttle hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. Captain Yuna's voice crackled through the external speakers, tense and controlled. "Doyen, step away from the creatures. We'll cover your extraction." "No," Doyen shouted back. "Captain, listen to me. The young one was trapped. I freed it and treated its injuries. These adults came to protect it. They're not attacking. They're defending their family." "You're suffering from shock and possible head trauma," Yuna replied. "We're reading your medical data. You need immediate treatment. Step away and we'll handle this." "Handle this?" Doyen couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You mean kill them? They haven't done anything wrong." The mother shifted beside him, her massive body tense. She didn't understand the words, but she understood threat. Her packmates had spread out, preparing for combat. Nabi was calling out from behind them, distressed sounds that cut through Doyen's heart. He looked up at the shuttle, then at the mother beside him, then back at the shuttle. An idea formed, crazy and desperate, but maybe the only chance they had. "Captain Yuna, I'm sending you the footage from my helmet camera. Watch it before you do anything, please." His fingers flew across his wrist computer, transmitting the entire recording. The long minutes of freeing Nabi from the trap. The careful medical treatment. The attacks from other predators. The way Nabi had protected him. The adults arriving and examining the situation instead of attacking immediately. Long seconds passed. Doyen could see Yuna watching something on her console. Her expression changed from determined to surprised to something like wonder. "That's impossible," she said finally. "Vralkan don't form bonds with other species. They're pure predators. Every study says so." "Every study is wrong," Doyen replied. "Or incomplete. Look at them, Captain. Really look. They're intelligent. They understand what happened here." The shuttle's weapons powered down slightly, not fully, but enough to ease the immediate tension. Yuna's voice was cautious when she spoke again. "Even if what you're saying is true, we can't leave you down there. You need medical attention." "I know, but I can't leave until I know Nabi will be okay." "Nabi?" "The cub. Its leg is badly injured. I did what I could, but it needs proper treatment or it might never heal correctly." There was a long pause. Doyen could hear muffled arguing through the comm, probably Yuna talking to her crew. Finally, she spoke again, her tone resigned. "You want to treat a Vralkan cub? With our medical equipment. While its very large, very dangerous parents watch? Yes. You're insane. Probably. Another pause. Then Yuna sighed. The medical officer says it's suicide. The security team says it's suicide. I think it's suicide. But something about that footage, she trailed off. All right. We're landing, but weapons stay hot. First sign of aggression. We're extracting you by force. The shuttle descended slowly, landing at the far edge of the clearing. The ramp lowered and 3 figures emerged. Captain Yuna, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and graying hair, a medical officer carrying a field kit, and a security specialist with a weapon that could probably take down an adult Vralcon with one shot. The adults growled as the humans approached. Doyen held up his hand, a gesture to both sides. Easy, he said. Everyone stay calm. He walked toward Yuna slowly, showing he wasn't under duress. The mother watched but didn't follow. When he reached the captain, she grabbed his arm and examined his face closely. You look terrible, she said bluntly. It's been a long night. I can see that. She glanced past him at the Vralcon family. I still think this is a bad idea. But that footage, the way that cub protected you, I've never seen anything like it. They're more than just predators, Doyen said. They have family structures, communication, empathy. We've just never had the chance to see it before. Yuna studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. All right, show us the patient. Walking back toward the Vralcon with the medical team felt surreal. The morning light painted everything in gold, and the danger of the night seemed distant now. But the adults' wariness was clear. They didn't attack, but they tracked every movement. Doyen knelt beside Nabi, and the cub immediately pressed against him, making soft sounds. The mother watched this interaction closely, her eyes moving between her cub and the strange humans. This is the injury, Doyen explained, carefully unwrapping the splint. The medical officer knelt beside him, professional despite the situation. I treated it with what I had, but it needs proper attention. The officer examined the leg with gentle hands. You did good work with limited supplies, but there's significant soft tissue damage. Without proper treatment, it might heal incorrectly. Can you fix it? Maybe, but I'll need to sedate the cub for a proper procedure. That was the problem, wasn't it? How did you explain sedation to creatures that didn't speak your language? How did you convince protective parents to let you inject their child with unknown chemicals? Doyen looked at the mother. She was watching everything with that intense intelligence. An idea came to him. Captain, in the shuttle, do you have any sedatives for humans? Of course, but why? Yuna's eyes widened as she understood. No, absolutely not. It's the only way, Doyen said. I need to show them it's safe. That we're not poisoning their cub. That's insane. You're already injured. Sedatives in your condition? A light dose, Doyen interrupted. Enough to make me drowsy, to show them what it does. Then they'll understand what we need to do for Nabi. The medical officer looked horrified. I can't recommend this. Your concussion alone, I know the risks. Doyen met Yuna's eyes. But I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you this is what needs to happen. Yuna stared at him for a long moment, then swore quietly. You really do have a death wish, fine, minimum dose. And if anything goes wrong, we're pulling you out immediately. The medical officer prepared a mild sedative, hands shaking slightly. Doyen took the injector and held it up, showing it to the mother. She leaned closer, examining it with her eyes and nose. This will make me sleepy, Doyen explained, knowing she couldn't understand but hoping his tone carried meaning. It's safe, watch. He pressed the injector against his arm and activated it. The hiss of the injection made Nabi flinch. Doyen sat down, waiting for the drug to take effect. The mother watched him with absolute focus. After a few minutes, Doyen felt the drowsiness creeping in. His eyelids grew heavy. His thoughts became soft and distant. He lay down on his side, still conscious but clearly affected. See? He said, words slightly slurred. Safe, sleepy, not hurt, safe. The mother approached him, sniffing carefully. She pressed one massive paw against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, checking his breathing. Doyen looked up at her through half-closed eyes and smiled. Trust, he whispered. The mother pulled back and looked at her cub. Nabi made questioning sounds. The conversation between them was complex, full of nuance Doyen couldn't begin to interpret. But finally, the mother made a decision. She moved aside, giving the medical officer access to Nabi. The procedure took an hour. The medical officer worked with skill and care, properly setting the leg, treating the damaged tissue, applying advanced healing compounds that would speed recovery. Nabi slept through it all, sedated and dreaming. The mother never looked away, watching every movement. Doyen drifted in and out of consciousness, the sedative and his exhaustion finally catching up with him. He was vaguely aware of someone treating his own injuries, cleaning the bite wound, addressing his concussion. Yuna's voice was a distant murmur, talking to someone on the ship about protocols and first contact situations. When Doyen woke fully, the twin suns were high in the sky. He was on a stretcher near the shuttle. Nabi was awake too, testing its newly treated leg carefully. The splint was professional now, lighter and more flexible than what Doyen had cobbled together. The cub saw him wake and limped over quickly. It pressed its head against his hand, making happy chirping sounds. Doyen scratched behind what might have been ears, laughing weakly. "You're going to be fine," he told Nabi. "Better than fine. You'll run and hunt with your family." The mother approached, and Doyen tried to sit up. She stopped him with a gentle press of her paw against his shoulder. Then she did something extraordinary. She opened her mouth and carefully, delicately placed something on his chest. A tooth, he realized. One of her own teeth still warm. Yuna gasped. "Do you know what that means? In pack societies, sharing something of yourself, it's a bond," Doyen finished. "She's saying we're connected now, pack." The mother made a deep sound, resonant and full of meaning. The other adults responded with their own calls. It sounded like agreement. "Like welcome, we need to go," Yuna said softly. "The command ship wants a full report, and you need proper medical care." Doyen nodded, but his eyes stayed on Nabi. "Will I see them again?" "I don't know. This planet will be flagged for further study now, carefully monitored. Maybe if you're part of the team." Doyen struggled to his feet despite protests from the medical officer. He walked to Nabi one last time and knelt down, ignoring the pain. The cub pressed against him, making small sounds that might have been goodbye. "Be brave," Doyen whispered. "Grow strong. Remember that sometimes the strangest friendships are the most important ones." The mother called, and Nabi reluctantly pulled away.